When you look closely at the behavior of high-level manipulators, you begin to notice something disturbing. They don't just respond to emotions like most people do. They construct them. They curate emotional atmospheres. And not randomly, but with precision, like an engineer writing code. What many mistake for charm or emotional intelligence is often nothing more than deliberate programming. It is not empathy that drives them. It is outcome. And the most efficient way to control the outcome is to control the emotional climate. You see, emotion is the gateway to action. People act not because of logic, but because of how they feel about the logic. High-level manipulators understand this. They know that if they can get you to feel shame, urgency, guilt, fear, admiration, or longing, they can get you to do almost anything. Not because they're louder, not because they're smarter, but because they know how to bypass the intellect and go straight to the limbic system, that ancient part of the brain that doesn't argue. It obeys. Think about the situations where you've been manipulated. You probably didn't notice at first. Maybe it started with a compliment when you were vulnerable, or a sudden silence after you expressed a boundary. Maybe they withdrew affection at the exact moment you needed reassurance. These are not accidents. These are precision tools. Emotional inputs that shape your internal state until you begin to doubt your instincts and defer to theirs. Until you start believing that your well-being depends on how they feel about you. That's the goal, not love, not connection. Control through emotion. Now in the martial arts world. And I don't mean the physical practice only, but also the internal discipline. We are taught something fundamental. Don't fight energy. Redirect it. High-level manipulators follow a similar principle. They don't oppose your feelings, they ride them. If you're joyful, they amplify it with validation. If you're angry, they redirect it at someone else. If you're hurt, they use it to build dependency. The manipulator doesn't resist emotion. They repurpose it. This is why many people feel emotionally exhausted around them. Not because something explosive happened, but because something subtle did. Repeatedly, over time, emotional micro-injections, calibrated and layered until the person no longer trusts their own perception. When that happens, the manipulator doesn't need to control you overtly. You begin to self-correct, to adjust yourself around their moods, their reactions, their silence. They don't need to manipulate your choices anymore. They've already rewritten your emotional operating system. And here is the most dangerous part. Manipulators often appear emotionally stable, controlled, even wise. Because they're not entangled in the emotional chaos they create, they stand at a distance, observing, nudging, refining. They are not reacting from trauma. They are leveraging your unresolved wounds to program outcomes that serve their agenda. It is not personal to them, it is practical. So, if you want to defend yourself against manipulation, you must reclaim authority over your emotional landscape. You must become a student of your own inner signals, not just a reactor to external pressure. You must begin to ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? And who benefits from me feeling it right now? That is not paranoia, that is discernment, because in a world full of programmers, the most revolutionary act is to know the code running inside you and to choose what gets written into it. In the visible world, we often mistake proximity for connection. We assume that closeness means care, that shared experiences mean intimacy. But when you enter the terrain of high-level manipulators, that illusion begins to dissolve. They may appear deeply connected, even loyal, even loving, but beneath that surface, their compass is not guided by relationship. It is governed by asterisk control asterisk. To them, people are not companions, people are variables, movable pieces in a constantly shifting strategy. They don't build relationships for emotional fulfillment. They build them for asterisk leverage asterisk. Every shared moment, every confession they pull out of you, every carefully timed apology, it all feeds a system designed not to connect, but to asterisk contain asterisk. It looks like closeness, but it's actually compression. You're not growing together, you're being shaped to fit. What's more deceptive is that they don't always do this aggressively. Often, they give just enough to make you believe that something mutual is unfolding. They might listen well, remember details, offer support until you realize that the support had strings. That your vulnerability was not protected, it was archived. It's only when you try to break the pattern, to set a boundary, to reclaim your own space, that the system they've built reveals itself. You pull back, and suddenly the warmth disappears. You say no, and they say asterisk, you've changed asterisk. You ask for respect, and they call it disrespect. You begin to see they were never reaching out to meet you where you are. They were mapping your emotional terrain so they could build a structure asterisk around asterisk you. One that restricts your freedom but convinces you it's protection. One that removes your choices but calls it love. And every time you try to escape it, they don't pull you back with chains. They use confusion, guilt, silence. The most sophisticated manipulators rarely need to force anything. They simply make it asterisk difficult asterisk to imagine leaving. It's important to understand the psychology behind this. Real connection requires vulnerability. It requires a willingness to be changed by someone else. That's risky. That takes surrender. But high-level manipulators don't want to surrender anything. They operate from a deep fear, not always conscious, but always present, that if they let go of control, they will be destroyed. So instead, they construct elaborate emotional systems where they are always one step above, not openly dominating, but quietly dictating the terms of the relationship. That way, they never lose. This is why, around them, people start to shrink. Their confidence erodes. Their identity softens. Not because they're being yelled at or mistreated in obvious ways, but because they've entered into an invisible contract. Asterisk, I will give you closeness, but only if you surrender control asterisk. And many don't even realize they've agreed to it until it's too late. If you want to protect yourself from this, you must redefine what connection means. Connection that costs your autonomy is not connection, it is capture. True connection elevates both people. It does not require constant compromise of selfhood. It does not use silence as punishment or affection as currency. It flows, it breathes, it makes room. So ask yourself, do I feel safe to expand in this relationship? Or am I constantly adjusting to avoid disruption? Do I feel trusted or just monitored? Do I feel valued or just useful? Because in the end, control disguised as connection is the most dangerous illusion of all. And once you see it for what it is, you must have the courage to walk not because you are unloving, but because you finally understand what love isn't. What makes high-level manipulators so effective is not simply that they understand human nature. It's that they understand how to asterisk use your virtues against you asterisk. They don't need to overpower you. They just need to find the values that matter most to you and weaponize them until you're paralyzed by your own conscience. You see, most people operate from an internal code, whether it's shaped by culture, religion, family, or personal experience. A sense of right and wrong, a desire to be kind, a need to be fair, an instinct to help, forgive, or understand. These principles are what give life meaning. They're the foundation of integrity. But what happens when someone uses your own code as the very tool to keep you silent, compliant, or confused? This is where manipulators are different from ordinary difficult people. They don't argue directly. They invert asterisk. They will tell you that your boundary is selfish, that your need for space is abandonment, that your anger is aggression. They'll accuse you of being the very thing you're trying to protect them from. And they'll do it calmly, strategically, while maintaining the appearance of reason. And suddenly, you find yourself explaining things that shouldn't need explanation, apologizing for the truth, questioning your own motives. It's a psychological reversal. What was once your strength is now reframed as a flaw. They do this not to correct you, but to control the story. Because if they can rewrite the narrative, they don't need to justify their behavior. They only need to make you believe that you're the problem, And the more deeply you value fairness or loyalty or compassion, the more likely you are to stay stuck trying to prove that you're good, while they quietly dismantle your confidence. It's essential to understand that this is not random, it's calibrated. Manipulators observe what matters to you. If you're someone who prides yourself on being forgiving, they'll push you just far enough to demand one more chance. If you value being seen as strong, they'll label your silence as maturity until it becomes a cage. If you care deeply about peace, they'll provoke just enough conflict to make you the peacemaker, and therefore the one always compromising. And what makes it even more disorienting is that from the outside, this dynamic often looks balanced. Others might say, but they seem so calm. You're the one who's always emotional. They're trying. Maybe you're being too sensitive. That's the brilliance of their tactic. They're not attacking your character in obvious ways. They're turning your own morality inward, using it like a knife you didn't know you were holding. So how do you navigate this? How do you protect yourself from being trapped by your own ethics? You don't abandon your values. You refine them. You learn the difference between being kind and being compliant, between being loyal and being enslaved, between being forgiving and being forgetful of patterns that hurt you. You realize that true integrity does not mean self-sacrifice at the altar of someone else's manipulation. It means living in alignment not just with your values, but also with the boundaries that protect them. When you recognize that someone is using your conscience as a control device, you must return to stillness, to clarity, to the awareness that your worth is not proven by how much you tolerate. It is revealed by how clearly you can see, and how courageously you can act when something no longer honors your truth. Because if your morality is being used to silence your instincts, then it's not your ethics that need changing, it's the company you're keeping. The difference between ordinary conflict and manipulation lies in preparation. Ordinary people react. They feel something, they express it, and they deal with the consequences in real time. Manipulators don't operate that way. Their mind is constantly scanning, calculating, adjusting. Every word they say, every silence they hold is part of a structure, a plan, a sequence. It's not random, it's chess. And what separates a master from a beginner in chess is not the brilliance of a single move, it's the foresight of 5, 6, even 10 moves ahead. What makes this dangerous is that it creates an illusion of coincidence. You don't realize you're being positioned until the board is already set. They plant subtle seeds, ideas, doubts, suggestions. They predict your emotional responses and build scenarios around them. When you confront them later, You may feel like you were led there by your own free will, but in truth you were guided. Conditioned, nudged, for example, they may start with flattery, not the obvious kind, but the precise kind that speaks to your unmet needs. If you've been unseen, they'll recognize your uniqueness. If you've been doubted, they'll praise your insight. But behind the praise is a map, an understanding of what you crave, and what you crave becomes what they control. Once they know where your validation lies, they know where to apply pressure. Later, when conflict arises, they will recall your words, frame your actions, remind you of things you shared in moments of trust, not to resolve, but to disorient. The goal is not to win the argument. The goal is to make the argument irrelevant by making you doubt your own position. And this is where the genius of the manipulator truly shows. They don't need to convince you of their view. They just need you to lose confidence in yours, and the brilliance is often in the pacing. They don't rush. They wait. Manipulators are patient. They know timing is everything. They'll let you grow comfortable, let you believe things are equal, let you believe you're leading even, and just when you feel safe enough to relax your boundaries, that's when the shift begins. Not overtly, but incrementally, and with each small concession you make, they adapt the strategy until your position is no longer your own. What makes it so disorienting is that they're often calm during this. They don't appear aggressive. They seem rational, composed, sometimes even generous, and you start to question, maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe this is just how relationships work. Maybe I'm the one being difficult. But those doubts didn't come from nowhere. They were planted, watered, cultivated. To the manipulator, outcomes matter more than truth, more than connection. They build systems where no matter what move you make, it leads to them regaining control. If you apologize, they win. If you defend yourself, they flip it. If you walk away, they'll return later, only better rehearsed. So how do you protect yourself? You must learn to slow the game down. When someone's words feel too perfect, too tailored, pause. When a situation escalates in a way that feels out of sync with the facts, pause. When your instincts whisper that something doesn't add up, even if the logic seems flawless, pause. Clarity always lives in stillness, but manipulators rely on momentum. They push you to respond, to explain, to decide under pressure. But your power is in resisting that pressure, in choosing presence over panic, awareness over impulse, because the only way to stay 5 moves ahead of someone who's playing a game with your mind is to step off the board entirely. One of the most dangerous qualities of a high-level manipulator is their ability to mirror. Not in a superficial way, not in the way we all unconsciously mimic the body language or tone of someone we like, but in a much deeper, more calculated way. They become a reflection of your internal world, your values, your language, your hopes, your trauma. They listen closely, not to understand you, but to become you, or rather, to become the version of you that you most want to believe in. This is not empathy, it's not resonance, it's not emotional intimacy, it's mimicry, it's strategy, it's psychological camouflage designed to bypass your defenses. Because when someone reflects back to us what we most deeply long to see, we assume they understand us. We trust them, we open the gates, and once those gates are open, it doesn't matter if the person on the other side is real. What matters is the access they now have to everything we've been protecting. Mirroring is powerful because it speaks directly to unmet needs. If you felt unseen, they'll notice you in the smallest ways. If you felt misunderstood, they'll finish your sentences. If you felt unloved, they'll love. bomb with precision. But it always moves in one direction, toward dependence. The goal is not to connect, it is to attach. Because once you're attached, you stop questioning, you stop observing, you begin to fill in gaps with hope. You explain away red flags. You romanticize inconsistency. The manipulator uses your own projections as their mask. And this is what makes it so difficult to detect. You're not just seeing them, you're seeing your ideal asterisk. Your idea of safety, of healing, of alignment. You're seeing what you want to be true, not what is true. And by the time the mask slips, you've already invested so much energy in the illusion that walking away feels like betrayal. Not of them, but of yourself. Now, in traditional martial practice, there is a saying, your greatest vulnerability is not your weakness, it's what you refuse to examine. In the realm of manipulation, this means your blind spot is often your longing. What you crave most deeply becomes the opening. The manipulator doesn't attack your wounds. They appeal to them, they soothe them, until that soothing becomes a script, and you begin to follow their cues without realizing the loss of autonomy. When mirroring is in play, the relationship feels magnetic, intoxicating, fated even, but it's not fate, it's familiarity engineered. It's your patterns reflected back to you in a way that makes you feel seen, but not strengthened. And that is the test. Do you feel more rooted in yourself, or more reliant on them? Do you feel empowered, or addicted to their presence? To guard yourself against mirroring, you must do the hard work of knowing your own reflection. You must meet your own needs before someone else offers to. You must become fluent in your patterns, your wounds, your longings. Because when you know yourself clearly, you cannot be seduced by a replica. True connection doesn't mimic, it meets. It doesn't imitate, it reveals. It doesn't accelerate attachment. It deepens understanding over time. And anything that moves too quickly, feels too perfect, or seems tailor-made to heal what you've never told anyone, that's not connection. That's construction. So before you give your trust to someone who seems to get you, instantly ask yourself, is this resonance or rehearsal? And if it's rehearsal, walk away not because you're guarded, but because you've finally learned to see beyond your own reflection. If you want to understand the final layer of high-level manipulation, you must let go of the assumption that manipulators need to be persuasive. They don't need to convince you, they don't need to be right. Their true objective is much simpler and far more dangerous. They want to make you doubt yourself . That's how control is maintained, not through dominance, but through internal confusion. When someone makes you question your memory, your instincts, your emotions, your reasoning, they don't have to restrain your body. They've already occupied your mind. And when the mind is in conflict with itself, it becomes passive, frozen. A person in doubt is a person in pause. And a person in pause is far easier to guide than someone who is grounded in their own clarity. This is the strategy at the heart of the manipulator's playbook. Destabilize your inner compass. Make it hard for you to trust what you feel. Hard for you to name what's wrong. Hard for you to even speak with certainty. And it's done in small, almost invisible ways and altered detail. A delayed response, a quiet contradiction. They won't outright tell you that you're wrong. Instead, they'll raise an eyebrow. Ask are you sure that's how it happened? They'll speak slowly, calmly, while you stumble to defend something you you experienced. And that's when the process begins, when your sense of reality starts to split. Over time, this erosion of self-trust leads to something subtle but destructive, dependence, not because you admire them, but because you can no longer rely on your own judgment. You start to look to them to define what's real. You check their reaction before expressing yourself. You measure your responses against their moods. You second guess your voice until silence feels safer than expression. And all of this collapse of confidence happens while they appear stable, rational, even supportive. That is why so many people stay in toxic dynamics, not out of weakness, but because they no longer trust their ability to see clearly. The manipulator has done something far more effective than winning an argument. They've created an environment where the argument never even starts, where confusion becomes the new normal, where questioning yourself becomes an unconscious habit. To undo this, you must begin where the manipulator started, at the level of awareness. You have to retrain your nervous system to trust what it knows. If something feels off, name it. If your body contracts in someone's presence, don't dismiss it. If you find yourself constantly explaining, justifying, or apologizing for your basic emotions, stop and ask, why? Rebuilding self-trust is not about arrogance, it's about alignment. It's about standing inside your own experience without needing someone else's permission to do so. You will not find clarity in their approval. You will find it in your own stillness, in the quiet space where your mind is no longer debating itself, but listening to the voice that was buried under layers of doubt. Manipulators don't steal your strength all at once. They take it piece by piece through confusion. That's why your most powerful weapon isn't louder arguments or sharper words. It's clarity. It's remembering that your experience is valid, even if no one else confirms it. And your truth doesn't need to shout to be real, because in the end, the manipulator doesn't win when they deceive you. They win when you begin to deceive yourself.